just great, wasn't it? The record winners of the FA Cup versus the current holders going for the jugular. And I think football is better when Manchester United and Arsenal hate each other. I think football is better when those two teams are going for the jugular against one another. Like all my life. Like when I was a kid, like I remember, genuinely, I can just about remember David Rocastle being involved and the players having such a fight that both teams were docked points. Obviously, then more recently, you've had Pizzagate and whatever else. The game where Dennis Bergkamp missed the Keane in the tunnel with Vieira. Yeah. Absolutely, like there's been like a war of attrition between Arsenal and Manchester United. Keown over Van Nistelrooy. Yeah. So yeah, there's been so much over the years, and I think that the spite and the venom and the hostility and the antipathy that was in the air in North London like that night, it was just great. It was a great cup tie. And for Manchester United, I genuinely believe that in football you get those statement results, those moments. And I think that Manchester United knocking Arsenal out the cup is a moment, but not only because it went Manchester United's way, but the way that it went their way. Like Harry Maguire, a gladiator. Like Joshua Zirkzee, suddenly becoming the hero. You know, it wasn't long ago against Newcastle, he was sort of mercy subbed.
Yeah, he was booed off.
Well,
his substitution was cheered as he came off the pitch in the 37th minute.
Exactly. And suddenly you've got Maguire, De Ligt playing like a gladiator. You've got Joshua Zirkzee being the man of the moment, playing very well, nutmegging Silly, but like it was good, and Amorim got it right. And I think that Manchester United could. It doesn't always go this way. But that is the sort of result that builds confidence, builds a team, builds belief, and can build a season.
Yeah, and for me as well, that it showed a big difference now in terms of the way that Amorim, I think, knows now that best 11. He was chopping and changing a lot. He was tinkering with a lot of things. Obviously, he had a few suspensions and injuries to deal with, but it now feels like he knows what team he needs to pick in order to get a decent result. It's a really big couple of results for Manchester United, isn't it?
Yeah, because
to go to Anfield as well.
Yeah, off the back of what happened at Anfield, absolutely. Because not only were they a good side, but they were warriors, like almost to a man. Like they were warriors. Lisandro Martinez, did you see that thing that he put up on social media? He's like, when they have the ball, it's a game. When we have when we have the ball, it's a game. When they have the ball, it's a fight. And you're like, that's a good attitude. I'll tell you another moment I noticed, a real moment. I thought Maguire was the best defender on the pitch by a distance. I thought he was excellent. And I've gone for Maguire's jugular on many times on this very show. I really have. I've been very hostile. I've been very hostile to Harry Maguire, but I only ever say what I see. And he was the best player on the pitch. I thought he was the best player on the pitch. Bruno Fernandes was decent.
And I felt for him when the penalty
so
was
did
given.
I
did, because that was never
so
a penalty.
Did I.
It was justice, wasn't it?
But my God, I thought Maguire was just simply excellent. But then there was the moment, the De Ligt moment. And I think that this is going to sound very harsh. And again, I'm going to use a word that won't necessarily chime with a lot of people and will think that this is a word I shouldn't be using. But I'm going to use it anyway. There was a moment, I don't know if you can remember it specifically. Kai Havertz is in the box, he plays it across. Leandro Trossard has an open goal. It's a completely open goal. He has the luxury of sticking the ball in an empty net. 90% his ball. And somehow Matthijs de Ligt gets there. Partly because of Matthijs de Ligt's desperation to get there. Partly because of his venom to get there. Partly because he wanted it more. Partly because of the cowardice on display from Leandro Trossard. People won't like me saying that, but I believe that's what happened. He was delicate.
Well, I mean, also have had the yips in front of goal for a long time now, haven't they?
But in this exact example, it was basically De Ligt bullied his way into. And what Leandro Trossard should have done is, those moments, like, do you know what Didier Drogba does in that situation? Didier Drogba ends up in the back of the net, injured perhaps. He ends up in the back of the net having taken a massive kick. De Ligt ends up injured perhaps, having taken a massive kick in the back of the net. The keeper probably gets clattered. They're all tangled up in the net, but crucially, the ball's over the line.
Yeah.
Leandro Trossard was just so pitiful there. It was like really, really pathetic.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm talking about this is really to highlight the brilliance of De Ligt fighting for the badge on his chest.
Yeah, do you know what for me makes it even more impressive as well is that I was starting to get worried, and I would have been worried if I was a Manchester United fan, about the way that Amorim was speaking even before games and after games about the character of his side. He was there saying they were too anxious, too afraid. He was saying that they were potentially in a relegation fight. And I kind of thought, you've got to G these players up at some point. You can't be burying them every single week. The way they've responded ever since he said they're too anxious. They're too afraid.
Yeah.
I think it's
good management. It's an example of good man management.
Yeah, it is.
No, Amorim's got the Midas touch so far. Like that result at Anfield was huge. And to knock Manchester in the space of 7 days, they've taken a point off Liverpool, a point that nobody expected them to get, and they've launched Arsenal out of the League Cup, out the FA Cup. It's massive.
To be fair, they've had some bad results, but I think you're right about statement wins, and I think you can add in to the Arsenal result. I think this one tops it actually, but beating Man City away in the way that they did as well.
Absolutely, but there was an element
wins...
of luck to that. Like, I don't think that will go down as a Diallo derby forever, right? It was an amazing way for them to win it. But I think that when we weren't convinced about Manchester United, when we weren't convinced about certain players or even the manager, some people, they could put that one down to luck. There was an element of fortune to the goal. There was an element of fortune to the timing of the fixture. Man City were all over the place. There was an element of self-destruction from Man City, like Guardiola on the line. There was nothing lucky about it. They've done well. They fought like warriors, down to 10 men when they didn't deserve to be. Penalty given against them when it shouldn't have been. And yet they come out, they're resilient. And that is so in keeping with the traditions of Man United. If you think of one word, I'm talking about the institution of Manchester United, one word to represent the club. Think about what they've been through, genuinely think over the years. They're like resilience. They're a resilient club. And I think that this team are now demonstrating the quality of that over... What are you laughing at?
No, I was just thinking. I wasn't even
laughing at me. I don't know what you're laughing at.
Do you know what I was just thinking about? We were talking there about individual performances, and the reason I was laughing is I started to think about the attitude of the captain, actually, Bruno Fernandes, who scored a brilliant goal in the game. And I know that obviously sometimes the spotlight goes on him for being petulant and for his body language not being the best, and I actually really enjoyed him. I really, really enjoyed him during that game. I thought he had his teammates back. My favourite bit, though, is when he was clearly fouled on the edge of the box, starts throwing his boots around, aiming for the... I actually loved that.
Yeah.
I know, and, I even, like you said about Maguire, on the show, I've criticised Fernandes in the past for that body language and not showing the right example, I think.
He's an excellent player,
but I think, actually, that was an example of him showing how much he cares and how much he is willing to fight for the
and he's the best player in that team, isn't he? Like, there's no two ways about it. He's the best player in that team. Like, he's 100%. He's beautiful footballer.
100%. Do you know what's interesting as well? You now look at Manchester United's fixtures, because I think before this, after they lost to Newcastle, and they were pretty pathetic for most of that game. They then had Liverpool away and Arsenal away in the cup, and I think most Manchester United fans were absolutely dreading those games, especially the Liverpool game. They've managed to come out, with a point away at Anfield and knocking Arsenal out of the cup. They've now got Southampton at home, got Brighton at home, Rangers at home in the Europa League. It's a more favourable run, and it feels now as if this is going to be potentially the point where their season does turn around and they can kick on from here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what has to happen with this. Because it would make a mockery of the two results, the two very impressive results, if they end up going back to square one. There's a few things that need ironing out. There's a lot of big decisions. I think you could almost argue that Xerxes should be starting now ahead of Højlund. I've kind of lost it with Højlund, any belief that I had in Højlund that was minimal anyway. But, a very good friend of mine, a friend of the show, Adam McCullough, always tells me that he loves Højlund, he really wants it to work. But I feel like I've seen enough. I feel like he deserves to be dropped. Whether he can use the drop, doesn't matter. He's Man United's number 9 man. He's Man United's main man, and I haven't seen enough in him. And I think that in terms of football being a meritocracy, Xerxes deserves an opportunity up there. I thought Xerxes did really well against Arsenal.
Yeah, he was. Nutmeg. Did you see his nutmeg?
Double nutmeg.
Oh,
launched Saliba as well. Saliba ends up on the floor. Xerxes ends up carrying the ball away.
And again,
symbolic, isn't it?
Impressive the way that they've got that mental fortitude to fight back and kind of and prove themselves to these fans. And a great moment as well, I thought, for Xerxes, that he was the man who scored that winning penalty as well. Just very quickly on Arsenal though, Rory, I'm just wondering, when you look at their season now, they are almost out of the League Cup. I'm crossing my fingers there, of course. I'm not counting my chickens for that game as a Newcastle fan. But, they're out of the FA Cup. The title race doesn't look great. They're obviously still battling in the Champions League, but you just feel that injury to Saka's massively derailed so much of their season. Where do you think this all leaves Mikel Arteta?
I actually don't believe that we need to have a conversation about Arteta's future yet. Because you are allowed to slightly dip. You are allowed to make mistakes and still be excellent at your job. It's how you react to those mistakes. So, for example, Kai Havertz, He tried it with Havertz. There's nothing wrong with trying it. It was a noble approach. They thought they could do something. Ultimately, they couldn't. He now needs to accept that and move on from that mistake. What he needs to not do is persevere with an obvious mistake. Havertz could be a squad player for Arsenal, but he has to stop starting him as a number 9.
Okay, one more question on this. Do you think there's any point in Arsenal hugely investing in this window in January, or do they almost...
Of course, 100%. No, you don't need to finish that question. They need to go out and splurge and make that signing.
To what, though?
They need to go and sign...
Coming second?
No, they need to go and sign a best-in-class centre-forward.
But why don't they wait till the summer? Why not wait till the summer?
Why wait?
Because it'll be more expensive in January.
What they should do, looking at this... Look, you and I have discussed Alexander Isak. You and I are on the same page. I don't see why Isak goes there now. But hang on, that's not... What they need to do is they need to test Newcastle's resolve. They need to offer a huge amount of money for Alexander Isak now. They need to destabilise potentially Newcastle, potentially Isak ahead of a game. They need to go and make noise. They're a bigger club than Newcastle, and they need to start throwing their weight about. I don't think Newcastle should sell. I don't think Isak would want to go. But the two things don't necessarily coexist. What Arsenal need to do, Arsenal need to, and if not Isak, Gyökeres. If not Gyökeres, Osimhen. If not Osimhen, Watkins. If not Watkins, they need to go and act like a massive club.